Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. And as we very typically do here, you're with myself and Lucy in the beginning, and then Day2 would be showing up just a little bit later on. As is frequently the case, I have a little idea about kind of what the subject matter is going to be. A hint, anyway. Not a lot of information, which is probably more typical too. So I'll take just a moment, and we'll see what the timeless guys got to share. So once again, we would greet all of you and express, as we frequently do, our appreciation at being able to interact with all of you in this way. Because, of course, each time that any of us do that, we add so very much to the experience that any of us are having. So today we thought that we would explore an idea that is familiar for those of you that are explorers of consciousness. But it's nice not only to get reminders sometimes, but of course there are individuals who are, perhaps we'll say, a little more new to the exploration who are joining us frequently. So these types of things are nice to touch base on again for those individuals. So what we thought we would talk about today is the idea of attention, your attention, and what exactly that means, and the nuances to that, and why that particular action of you, action of consciousness, is something to pay attention to. So if you, and we'll start with your eyes. If you have your eyes closed and you open your eyes, you're looking at something in that moment. As you're looking at whatever that is where your attention is. And we'll just say that there's nothing else going on within your consciousness at that time, just to make it simple. In other words, you're not thinking about anything and other things like that. We'll talk just about the vision. So there's something that you are, and the word you would use frequently would be perceiving, right? So you open your eyes and let's say you're looking at a wall and you're going to see qualities to that wall. You might see a color to that wall. You might see contour of that wall. Maybe it's straight. Maybe there's angles. Maybe there's various shapes to that wall. There may be differences in the type of material that wall is made up of. There's many components of the wall that are part of what you are. Again, we'll use the word perceiving as you look at the wall. And so as you bring your attention to the wall, there are these flavors to the wall that are part of what flows in to that experience that your attention is having. So then we could think about touch. If you lay your hand on a surface, and you could think of any type of surface that you would like to, you're going to feel a number of things about it. It may be a smooth surface. It may be a rough surface. It may be a warm surface. It may be a cool surface. It may be a surface that for some reason has some sort of a vibrational quality to it that you can feel. It may be a surface that feels very still. There can be a number of, again, qualities to the surface that you've involved your touch in. As you touch the surface, that's where your attention is. It's on your experience of touch. And then all the qualities that surround your experience of touch. Your attention then is filled in with the other qualities of what's going on with the touch. We can shift then to your hearing, let's say. As you shift your attention to your hearing, and you can imagine yourself in many different states, let's say that you're listening to It could be anything. It could be a piece of music, or perhaps it's, let's say, a movie. In this, again, you have sound waves that are showing up in the mechanism of your ear, creating an effect, and your attention is there. It's on what's being heard. Now, there are many things that's coloring what is being heard. There are the voices of the individuals in the movie, if you're watching that. There may be sounds, if it's an outdoor setting. There may be birds. There may be many things. If it's a song, you're hearing various instruments. You may be hearing a person singing. There are various other qualities, other layers that are associated with that type of experience, type of action that you're having as your attention is focused on hearing. So now let's approach this a different way. When you are seeing something, when you are touching something, when you are hearing something, who is doing the seeing and the touching and the hearing? You are. And by you, we're not talking about only the body. We're talking about the you, shall we say, behind the body. You using what's called the body, or sometimes the ego, a construct, are having this physical experience. Other individuals have said that the ego is the lens through which you have your experience of physical reality. If you see your physical experience as a lens, or shall we say, multi-layered filters through which you have your experience, then you can begin to see that there's more to this idea of where your attention is than you may typically consider it. So, in that regard, your attention is you, all of you, the deeper you. And then through a variety of mechanisms, some of which we've mentioned, others of which we may add to here, you move that attention to various places within your experience, shall we say. So, as you have an experience, regardless of what the experience is, usually there's many layers to your experience. Let's say that we'll begin again with vision. You turn and you look at whatever it is. You have this, what you call visual component of your experience. Then there are also things that are going on that maybe are happening and you're not really paying attention to them. One of those is the feeling state or the emotional state that's involved. There's always a feeling state involved with what it is that you're interacting with. There's always that going on. You may not be paying attention to it, but it's always there. So there's a whole variety of layers. There are psychological things. There are thoughts that are going on within your mind as you're, quote unquote, perceiving things as well, as you bring your attention someplace. There's a metaphor that's used frequently in this regard. And if you can imagine yourself being in a dark room and having a flashlight that you can hold in your hand, and then you turn that flashlight on and the beam shines and it's going to hit something in that room. If you can think of that flashlight beam in this metaphor as your attention, and what it lands upon as being where it is you are, in this regard, focusing your attention, right? What part of physical reality is your attention directed towards in that particular moment? Then what it is that shows up as the light of your attention hits that object, that's the colors that flavor your physical experience. That's the way that energy comes together to form the object. That's the feeling states that you have that come in that are part of why and how you're experiencing that. That's the thoughts that are there that come in that alter that type of thing as well as a number of other layers. So the concept is that as you go through your day, you're going to move your attention moment by moment by moment from this thing to that thing to that thing. And we might be talking about a person, we might be talking about a situation, we might be talking about a sound, we might be talking about a visual thing, we might be talking about a touch sensation. We're just going to say an action. All of those would be actions. So you're going to move your attention. You're going to point your consciousness, your inner consciousness, through this multi-layered filter that you call you, your personality, your ego being, and you're going to have these experiences of physical reality. As you point yourself in any direction, what will automatically begin to occur is that whatever beliefs you hold about that particular place that you've then pointed your flashlight, that you've then pointed your attention, will automatically flow into your experience. You don't have to reach out and grab them and go, okay, I want this belief, this belief, this belief. They're going to automatically flow in as part of your experience. At this point, they're going to do that. As all of you move into a deeper understanding of yourselves, what you will do with yourselves is you will choose which of those you want to be associated with the flashlight beam that you're pointing wherever it is you're pointing. But in this moment, most of the time, they're automatically flowing in. Depending on how much of this exploration you've done and what you've allowed yourself for movement in that, you may at this point recognize the beliefs that are showing up as you point your attention someplace that are then coloring your attention, that are bringing the context, shall we say, to your attention, to where you put it. And so this then becomes something that is worth paying attention to, is where is my attention in the moment? Because your attention is quite mobile and you are the one that is steering your attention. If in your mind you have pointed your attention at particular memories and particular feeling states about a particular situation, and you recognize that, you can in that moment choose to point your attention someplace else, to point your attention at a different way of perceiving that particular event by bringing in different types of emotions. You can use your imagination that way. You can begin to imagine that particular scenario playing out in a different way. And you will draw to your experience all the things that support that as well. So you can point your attention, you can point that flashlight of your hand any place in the room that you want to. And the room in this regard will say being like the mind, right? Any place. You can point it anywhere that you would like to. And as you do that, you can also flavor it any way you would like to. So this then becomes a very powerful way of helping you direct your flow of how you move through your life. And understanding that in each moment you're doing this. And again, this is associated with a term that's well known in these explorations, which is called mindfulness. To be aware, basically, of where it is you are pointing your attention. You, where are you pointing you in that moment? And then understanding that the flavoring that you give to where you're pointing yourself in that moment is then going to begin to flow into your experience, color your experience, and provide for you the experience that all those things as they come together will for you. And so at this point, we feel that we've shared enough of this concept so that if there would be any questions or any expansions that others may desire that will probably show up for Lucy, we'll pause and say, how are you feeling in that regard?
Happy and well. And yes, I do have a question. I love the concept that what we are seeing and touching and hearing is an actual experience of the all that is, that we are. So I haven't actually had that thought before. So thank you for sharing that. I guess I've always felt that there's the human experience, and then we're kind of always like breathing in and expanding out into the divine experience. But what you've just said is the divine experience, the all that is experience, is happening here and now through these eyes, ears, fingers. It's happening now. So there is no separation. The experience is being had in the present moment through the physical body. I love that. And then I find myself thinking, well, that would apply to all the senses, but probably not thought, because our thoughts go everywhere. Our thoughts don't feel like that's necessarily our divinity or a divine experience. It feels quite different than that. So, can you talk about that a bit?
Indeed.
Thank you.
Your thoughts influence your experience in that your thoughts are, there's a mechanism of what your thoughts do. Your thoughts interpret and they translate the information that you're getting from other parts of your consciousness. Your vision brings you information. Your ears bring you information. Your touch brings you information. Your nose brings you information. If you are paying attention, you're getting information from the larger you all the time as well. Your emotions and your feeling states are bringing you information. Your imagination is bringing you information. Your intuition is bringing you information. Impressions, impulses. Even your physical environment is bringing you information. The mechanism of thought interprets and translates all that information. It's very closely associated with your beliefs. And so it translates and interprets moment by moment by moment the information that you are providing it in that moment. So again, in part, we're going back to your attention as well. And here, again, as we or anybody else speaks about these various components of consciousness, these various mechanisms of consciousness, attempt not to hold them separate from each other. They are all very intertwined with each other. They don't stand separately. And so your physical reality, your senses, your beliefs, your thoughts, your attention, all the various components of consciousness are all flowing and moving together to provide this integrated experience that you have. So, as your thoughts are doing this, they're connected very strongly to your beliefs. Now, as you bring yourself more information about how this reality of yours comes together, what you allow yourself to do many times is to pause in the way that you utilize your thought process, to give it the opportunity to expand out and to bring in more information. You allow yourself to bring in more information from you, which provides you with the type of information that is not available to you through your five senses. You can't look around your environment and go, that's why this is true. That's why this is true. You have to then trust this information that's showing up, whether it's the imagination, whether it's intuition, whatever it might happen to be, feeling states, emotions that give you information that you don't have through your five senses. But it is information. And once you learn to trust that, you will add that to the palette of information that your thought processes then use to interpret and translate your reality for you. And then that then is part of what your perception is. And your perception being the mechanism that creates the experience of reality that you're having. But it's a many threaded experience and expression of consciousness.
If a person found themselves grappling with a problem and they suddenly realized that they had been ruminating on that problem, worrying for the last hour, it feels like that's not a particularly elevated aspect of ourself. it's a very small self experience. What's your perspective on that?
It's a particular type of an experience. It's a very valid experience, and an experience that sometimes it's difficult to perceive it in this way, but is totally valid and totally embraced by the rest of who and what you are. Now, is there perhaps in that regard an easier experience to have? An experience that allows a flow into a larger awareness of who and what you are? There are those experiences. But you have your attention focused very strongly on just a few things. And so, in that, and again, your attention is not going to judge where it is that you put it. That is what is called free will in your terminology. You get to put your attention wherever you would like to put your attention. And in that, the reality that your experience is going to flow to you. So when you choose to move your attention to a different feeling state, a different imaginative state, different thought processes, because you bring more in to your entire experience, then your experience will reflect that. Your mood will reflect that. There are many, many things that will reflect that. So, yes, you have the freedom, of course, to be able to recognize where it is you've been placing your attention for a while and to shift your attention to something else. And of course, as you do that, you will get an experience that reflects how have you shifted your attention.
Got it. Thank you.
And so in this, there are many layers to this particular idea. And as you may be familiar with, and as you may hear from others, as we share information with all of you in this particular way, there's also connections that are going on, shall we say, behind the scenes with all of us. So this particular subject matter is a subject matter that will move many things within individuals. So we don't want to add a lot to this at the moment. So if there's not something that's at the forefront for you to explore a little bit more or to look for a little more clarification on, then we would say at this point, this is what we will share for the day.
I do have one more topic that I'd love to discuss. Thank you. And that is a lot of people they're mindful and they're loving toward themselves. They take good care of their bodies and they have a breath practice and they're in nature and they're having a lot of really positive experiences. And at the same time, they may have never actually had the experience of transcendental infusion is the only word that's coming to me in this moment with all that is. Feeling themselves as both a unique point of consciousness, but fully enmeshed, not really liking that word either, in all that is. Feeling that all that isness. Do you have any suggestions for someone who's wanting that experience?
Yes, and it's going to seem a little strange that we would phrase it in this way more than likely. Attempt, if you can, to discontinue wanting the experience. Because what you do in that regard is where you then point your attention is what is not occurring. That is what you are focusing on, is what is not happening. And so as you point your attention in that direction, you will continue to pull in experiences that reinforce that very place that you're putting your attention. Now, as well, it may be that there are experiences that an individual has yet to have that they would value having in a particular way, which may mean a manner of perceiving things that is not quite as broad. They may choose or desire, usually a little bit from behind the scenes, to have that experience And again, remember that there's a back and forth happening all the time. And there's a back and forth happening, we can say at least every 24 hours, but much more frequently than that. And so you are inputting and looking at and choosing how it is you would like to have these interactions in a very dynamic way. And so you can change this, of course, at any time. But the concept is that if if having an experience in a particular way will bring a great deal of fulfillment to you, then you may hold off on the experience of expansiveness to allow this other experience to happen in a way that you will find quite fulfilling. And then at some point you will have that. So it can be a mix of things.
Thank you. Thank you also for the reminder that when our dominant vibration is one of wanting, the universe is great at giving us more of that experience of wanting, quite different than the experience of being it already.
Indeed. If you believe that there is something missing, then that will be your experience. That it will feel like there is something missing. When of course, once you realize that there's not something missing and you relax into that, you will begin to get the prompts and the understandings about and even many times what will occur is that you will have, it might be through dreams, it might be through imagination, it might be through just some knowingness that shows up in the moment. There can be many ways about the flow of your experience and maybe why it is that flow is showing up the way that it is in that moment versus how maybe you may have some ideas it should have been showing up in that moment,
Mm.
which can be freeing, perhaps we'll say, at this time.
Yes, it's like when we look back at our lives and we see that at the time we were struggling against things as they were unfolding, but we see now in hindsight that it was all unfolding in the perfect order.
Yes. Thus the saying that you have that hindsight is 2020 vision. Yes. Once you have the information. But of course, what you can do with practice is you can become familiar that that information is available now.
Mhm.
And you can see the direction that you're moving and the reasons why you're moving that direction. It doesn't necessarily have to be in what you term to be your future, where you look back at the event, but you can see it while you're having the event. It takes,
Yes,
however, a great deal of freedom in that regard, trust in yourself, and the awareness to have that information show up for you. But it can.
I love that. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. And so, with that, as always, we hope that your exploration is going well and it's feeling satisfying to you. And if there are challenging places that you find yourself, that you're allowing yourself to have at least some idea of why those challenges are there in your life. And so, with that, we will again hope that you have a very nice day. Thank you.